Radical innovation starts with medical discussion. Talking about the future and what comes next with Project MedTech.
Hello, everybody. I'm Lindsay Deneen, Director of Marketing and Engagement at Project MedTech, and welcome to another episode of the Project MedTech podcast. If we can help you in any way, or you would like to suggest a future guest, you can email us at info@projectmedtech.com. If conversations like this are helpful, that's exactly why we bring people together at our signature events, the Midwest Showcase, the Startup Symposium, and Coming to America. For more on our events that include networking, education, and pitch competitions for startups, check them out at www.projectmedtech.com. We even have sponsorship options if your company is also dedicated to accelerating medical technology to impact patient lives. So reach out today to get involved. The Project MedTech podcast is proudly sponsored by Ward Law. Ward Law Office, LLC is a boutique law firm specializing in the practice of patent and trademark law. They are committed to providing inventors, entrepreneurs, and businesses of all types with personal and professional services and are flexible to meet your unique needs. It is their goal to both educate on how to secure valuable patent and trademark protection and to provide high-quality services at rates affordable to independent inventors, startups, and small businesses alike.
Today's episode of Project MedTech is brought to you by Wheelhouse DMG, performance marketing for privacy-first industries like medtech and healthcare. Every Wheelhouse client experienced record growth in 2025. That's the result of more than a decade building the data infrastructure, measurement systems, and domain expertise that healthcare and medical device marketing actually requires. Find out how every Wheelhouse client experienced record growth in 2025 at wheelhousedmg.com.
Without further ado, let's dive in.
Okay, Shannon, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. Last time I had you on was episode 121. What year was this? This would have been, my goodness, I need, the website's not working right now. Oh, there we go. Wow. January 2nd of 2023. You're my first episode of a new year. Back then, you were with a company called UserWise, which was a company you were the founder of, and I believe since then been acquired. But so for all those listening, you should go back and listen to that episode and listen to Shannon then. But I want to first start with a introduction for all our new listeners of who you are, your background, fill in the gap on UserWise, and then tell me what you're doing now.
Amazing. So I started the process of selling my company after running it for 10 years as CEO. I started the process of selling it, I think in 2021, I started the process. And then 2022, that's when we closed the deal. And so last time I was on the podcast, we were just kind of kicking off like that transfer of ownership. I still am a part owner of UserWise by ClariMed. But yeah, transitioning to a new CEO. And so I was working through all that and stayed on as principal, and then found that I had more and more time to do other things as I had exited. And so in 2023, I started working less and less and volunteering more and more. I was really curious about homelessness because I live in the beautiful Rose Garden neighborhood of San Jose, California. It's like suburban utopia, in my opinion. And just a half a mile away was the largest encampment in Northern California, where there's thousands of people living without running water or sanitation. And that just honestly confused me. I was just very perplexed by this dichotomy. So I started going into the encampments through a nonprofit called City Team and offering free meals, getting to know people who live there and getting to know their stories behind how they ended up there. And then I also joined Recovery Cafe. I'm the secretary of the board of directors of Recovery Cafe San Jose. There's over 50 recovery cafes nationwide and in Canada, where it's sort of like a no cost sobriety program. There really aren't too many no-cost sobriety programs out there, so it's a great solution for people who have no funding to get sober. So with all that background, I saw a really great opportunity to make a really significant dent in the number of unhoused people by rehousing them, or more importantly, preventing the homelessness in the first place, which is the most cost-effective methodology for ultimately ending homelessness.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so go back even one step before UserWise. What was your background? How did you get into human factors? Because this is such an interesting story. But I'm assuming, there was a piece of this where, if you get into life sciences, which is human factors testing, and the importance in medical devices of having that, you want to support patients and do better for the world. So there's a natural evolution into what you're currently doing, which makes total sense in my eyes. But I'm curious, what was your background and that got you into life sciences in the first place?
When I studied mechanical engineering at UCLA, I grew up in the Bay Area, so I was around a lot of startups, had a lot of connections with startups. So I was able to pretty easily get some really great internships at startups where I'm really offering meaningful contributions because they are startups and they'll take whatever help they can get. So with that foundation, I was able to get a job in the professional development program of Abbott Laboratories, where is like college after college, where we lived in corporate housing and got moved from one division to another. Really great exposure. And then from there, I was able to get a job at Intuitive Surgical. And I was one of the first 4 human factors engineers on that team, laying the groundwork for how do you do human factors engineering for the most complex medical device ever invented. And then from there, I saw an opportunity to consult. All along, I was at the very beginning of this wave, and I saw the tidal wave coming of human factors. They had started enforcement in 2009. The FDA had started enforcement in 2009 with infusion pumps, surgical robotics, and I really saw what was coming for everyone else. And so I thought, I think this is going to lend itself really well to consulting. And then, sure enough, the FDA guidance for human factors was formally published in 2016. Before that, they had released a guidance in 2011. So I was able to take this major change in regulatory framework in the United States and eventually abroad, and convert it into a business opportunity, the opportunity to found UserWise and assist all these startups and Fortune 500 established companies to comply with the human factors regulations that were pretty new to everyone at the time.
Yeah. Okay. So I talk about this. Actually, we have a sticker right here. We've made stickers about some of the things we talk about the most. If you can see it on the screen if people are watching, like we have a 5-10K finisher sticker, and then we had one at "You had me at clinical evidence," and this is one of my favorite things. This is
I love these. Are these for my car?
Yeah, you can take them for your car. Yeah, I'll have to send them out to you. But the clinical evidence one is one we talk about all the time where, yes, the FDA dictates what kind, if any, clinical they want to see, but clinical evidence is important for putting a good quality product out there and also commercialization and those types of things. It's the same thing with human factors, right? Yes, the FDA regulates it, but at the same time, you should want to have human factors done anyways. What's the most important piece you get from why should if a startup's listening in right now, why should they care about human factors testing beyond the fact that the FDA regulates it, but what do they get from that in terms of commercialization or user experience, those types of things?
I have a kind of interesting take on that. I mean, what people argue is that you're more competitive. So you will have a competitive advantage by having such a delightful and appealing user experience. There's also the prospect of having to do a recall, the idea that if you have a safety critical issue that you're not detecting pre-launch and you happen upon it or realize that it truly is an issue post-launch, it's maybe a death sentence actually for a startup, if not for an established company, like a very financially burdensome experience. But the reality is that human factors engineers were shouting about this since the first human factors guidance came out in 2001, I think it was. And that guidance already back then, it was saying you need to use kind of a risk management prioritization to iron out usability issues. Otherwise, people in the field are going to get injured and or be killed by your device. So people were kind of shouting into echo chambers all along. But I think the reason why companies weren't embracing human factors, or most companies weren't embracing human factors until the FDA started intervening, is because recalls, I mean, this could be a really controversial thing for me to say, but like, I think recalls, they tend to like just be kind of like a little amount of money compared to the millions of dollars, billions of dollars that maybe like a pharma company could make in the meantime, just going to market earlier. So I think there's that like reality if you really get into the equation of like the cost of a recall for an established company. And then also the FDA, by virtue of having the regulatory framework, they're kind of making mini monopolies. It's kind of a non-competitive space compared to consumer products, and it changes based on different types of products. But when you have this, like all these mini monopolies where their IP is covered by patents, etc., there's less incentive to differentiate using user experience. And so there's no like market pull to make a delightful user experience. And that's why we ended up with, in the early 2000s, a lot of medical devices on the market where maybe you have an infusion pump where the free flow button is right next to the off button, and someone might press free flow instead of off and then overdose the patient. Things like that were happening all the time. And I would always scratch my head, like when I got started, like, why is this happening? This makes no sense. But maybe I'm more jaded or something, but I think it's because the pure economics didn't drive the adoption of delightful user experiences for a lot of these mini monopoly scenarios.
This is why I was super excited to talk to you about this, because you're an expert in the field, but you really don't at this point. Like you kind of do. You mentioned like, you're still an owner, but you're not in the day to day, so you don't have as much of.
I'm a pretty passive owner.
That's right. Yeah. So where do thinking back to like what you see and what you do, where do a lot of startups get human factors wrong?
The main misunderstanding is that they believe that human factors is about making slick, appealing user interfaces that look cool, or a product that has a nice, appealing visual form. Or they prioritize the wrong issues to focus on that don't really get to the bottom of patient safety. So what human factors is, it's a prioritization of various user needs or hazard related use scenarios. And you need to prioritize these design problems based on criticality to the patient. So which of these design features could potentially lead to bodily injury or harm to my end users if they use the product incorrectly? And those are the ones that you really want to bubble to the surface, and that you want to spend 90% of your design time ironing out, because those are the issues that lead to recalls or catastrophic regulatory issues, or a delayed 510K because the FDA has concerns about a hazard-related use scenario that you didn't really spend much time looking into, and instead you were trying to decide which branding color was more appealing to the end user.
When you were at Intuitive, because to your point, at the time, it's probably the most complex product. It still could be, right? But there's obviously more robotic surgery devices that are cleared now and out there. What was the biggest thing you learned about human factors there? Because I just have to imagine there was it was probably like drinking through a fire hose, in terms of how this got deployed and put out into the wild, and training and what that looked like. And you were completely overhauling how things got done in the healthcare system.
Yeah, and when we got started, it was sort of the first formal, like, modern human factors validation that was compliant with the FDA expectations now. And the bar really has raised a lot. And at the time, one usability study session with a simulated surgical team, it easily was 14 hours. So we were doing 14-hour days kind of back to back with 16 sessions. Each session would have a surgeon and then a support staff member with experience with circulating tasks and scrub technician tasks. And then we would simulate tasks. So I would get in at, 6 a.m. just to rinse porcine bowel, all the poop out of the bowel, and then create a custom model for the surgical team to operate on. So what did I learn from all that? I think we really just paid and we presented at the HFES back in 2013 on all the methodologies we came up with, and how to prioritize what we teach in training. Since then, there has been even more evolution. I think now there's an expectation that you have both circulating nurse and scrub technician, and maybe even an anesthesiologist if you have table motion. So you're talking about recruiting a full team of 2 physicians and 2 support staff. You can imagine how expensive that is to pay them all to fly out from wherever to participate in this study. And then there's also the issue of training. I had some FDA feedback in the years before I kind of concluded my involvement, where they were requiring real life training on robotic naive surgeons. So the idea, and so if you're a robotic surgeon, it takes months to learn robotic surgery. You apprentice cases, etc. And so the FDA was actually asking us, hey, can you train naive surgeons on how to do robotic surgery in general? And it was kind of flying in the face of the 510K model, where it's kind of like, well, we're not, training surgeons in the art of robotic surgery. We're just looking at kind of the delta of what's unique about our system. And so for a while, the FDA was contesting that. So I haven't checked back up. The last time I checked in, that was still an issue. But you could imagine that's an astronomically expensive endeavor if you're going to be offering weeks of training to a given surgical team who has never seen a robotic surgery system before. So training has become a lot more of an issue. But what did we learn? I think how to analyze the data, how to schedule these things so that we're not working 14-hour days, but we kind of had to go through all that pain to come up with the best practices.
I love it. Okay. Super helpful. Again, if you want to hear more about the human factors, go back and listen to Shannon's previous episode as well. But it's always good to check in on that kind of stuff. So that was episode 121. All right, let's talk more about HavenSafe. So you kind of introduced it, but you exit UserWise, decide you're going to take a break, kind of have like a little mini career break, I'm sure, right? And then you jump into this. What makes you jump it? What? I mean, you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what actually makes you kind of say, oh, this is my next thing that I want to do? And give us more details about how that's going, what you're doing, and how others can get involved.
Well, I have a 5-month-old and a 9-month-old. And I was thinking when the 5-year-old was about 1, I was like, give me 18 years. By the time she's an adult, I'm going to eradicate homelessness. I'm going to make sure there's no one living outside with no access to water. Just give me 18 years. I'm going to figure this out. And I just saw that there was a lot of low-hanging fruit in this area. I still I've only met one other person who has a deep experience in tech and or engineering in this entire space in my county, which is quite concerning. And I think there's a fundamental problem at play where the nonprofit agencies aren't managed by their management to produce results, or with KPIs in mind, key performance indicators. It's all touchy feely, like, oh, here's what we're saying we're doing, and as long as you can persuade funders to donate based on what you're saying you're doing, you're successful. So I think there's sort of a shift, kind of like this human factors revolution that I saw, and I saw so much change there, and it gives me hope that maybe we can revolutionize this space of social services, to hold agencies and governments accountable to actually producing results. And I feel like we kind of saw that with human factors, in that now you see less recalls, or less injuries or deaths due to catastrophic human error. Now we've eliminated the catastrophic human error from most devices. So that kind of overdosing the patient scenario that I mentioned earlier, hopefully, knock on wood, like, it doesn't happen as often these days due to the new regulatory framework. So I'm very hopeful that in this new sector that I'm in, I can kind of bring what we learned and had success with in the human factors field, and then try to address some issues that I've seen. And I think there's the fundamental underpinning of all this is that in human factors, we eradicated the word user error. Now we say use error, because that invites the designers to address a systemic design issue that's beyond blaming the user. As soon as you blame a user, there's nowhere to go from there. So in the same way, if we just blame people for being homeless, or blame a caseworker for making a mistake, that is not productive for anyone. We need to figure out what are the systemic attributes that contributed to this outcome, and then address these systemic issues.
I love that. I also love the tie back to human factors. So how can people, if someone's listening in and is like, this is really cool, how can they get involved and support?
Well, most importantly, so I've mapped out all of the social services, especially in the space of homelessness prevention. There's hundreds of resources, at least here in this county. There's actually almost $30 million sitting there for people to scoop up if they are about to become homeless, if they're being evicted into homelessness. But what I was finding is no one knew about it, and it was inefficient and challenging to access. So I mapped out hundreds of different programs and put them into a software where someone calls our call center and then they get matched with the correct program, because otherwise they just have no hope of like really locating the right program, and they're just going to give up, which is what was happening before HavenSafe. So our call center, where the call operator uses our software to match the caller, and the call operator is always a volunteer. I'm a full-time volunteer. I just donate my money and time. And then all of our operators of our call center, they take calls from the comfort of their own home to assist these people who are in crisis. And what's really interesting / disturbing is that 38% of the people that HavenSafe extends funds to are single moms and dads. Because here in the Bay Area, or at least in Santa Clara County, the lowest rent you're going to find here is $1,700. And if you are paid minimum wage and you pay $1,700 a month in rent, that leaves you about like 25 or 30 bucks a day for all other expenses. So could you imagine like doing everything in your life, gas, car, for like $30 a day? It just doesn't pencil out here. And that's why we're seeing this influx of single parents calling HavenSafe, needing urgent help so that their kids don't move into the car with them because they got evicted.
Yeah. Okay. And how is HavenSafe funded?
We are not government funded at this point. Unfortunately, we're too controversial and we are challenging the homelessness industrial complex. So the government so far has kind of balked at offering us traditional funding sources. So we are scrappy. We are low cost because we are heavily volunteer run. And yeah, so my big ask is please come volunteer with us. We need more helpers in our call center to take calls from the comfort of your own home, and your phone number will remain confidential. But with regards to what funding do we have, it's been like friends and family, myself, just anyone who can pitch in $100 here or there. And your money goes a long way here because we are mostly volunteer run. We have 2 paid caseworkers, but that's about it. So they are able to manage. I have Jenny managing, I think, 42 households at any given time. And Tim has been managing 60 households at any given time. And this summer we have a huge team of interns where they're just like phenomenal unpaid interns who are like also managing cases. But essentially this software, it augments the ability of an intern who's just graduated high school or something, and she's able to offer this like really high level case management because our software enables that.
And so while this is specific to Santa Clara County, this is theoretically repeatable in other counties then.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we really look forward to expanding into other places, especially places that are less toxic than Santa Clara County. I think the problem is we have so much money here, as I mentioned, like $30 million. And it's honestly just like a very toxic homelessness industrial complex. It's probably the worst county to try to start a new innovative company in. But it is where I live, so that's where I'm focusing first. But yeah, if you are in a county and you think, oh, we have a homelessness problem, I'm gonna call up my city council member and try to incentivize HavenSafe to go there and start there next. I am all ears for that and ready to replicate our processes elsewhere. Now, I will say that our software, it's mostly focused on metropolitan areas where there's hundreds of programs. So for example, I go surfing a lot, and I met with someone in Santa Cruz, and there's kind of like one main nonprofit that does all the homelessness work. Along with all the churches. So there is some need for coordination and organization there, but not to the extent of San Jose, California, or Santa Clara County, where there's tons of little cities all together, all doing different things. And there's literally like a thousand different agencies. So it's something where no one human could wrap their head around everything that's available.
Yeah, increased complexity, more of a fit for HavenSafe. Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. Shannon, I have 2 questions for you in closing. The first one is for any company that is outside the U.S. that is looking to come to the U.S. What is one thing they need to get prepared for market entry?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll say human factors, because my view is just from the human factors perspective. So there may be some critical issue that's come up in 2026 that I haven't heard about because I'm focused on homelessness. But I think the requirements. So I sat on the 6366 standards committee, where we would sit in a room with a projector for 5 days straight for 10 hours per day in Provence, France, arguing over one sentence. So that was what I did for a time as a contributor to the standards. And so I know Europe quite well and other regions. It does seem like China is starting to move into human factors, which is interesting. But before, it was just Europe and the United States that really focused on human factors. And so, for example, whenever I worked with Israeli companies, human factors, the price tag on a human factor study is like quite a shock because it's almost on par with a clinical study. I mean, maybe not really, but it's pretty pretty miserable how expensive it is, and how labor intensive, and just like reimbursing surgeons, etc. So yeah, just get ready for to get some more funding to actually pass human factors and do it correctly. Don't cut corners; it will delay your submission. And the FDA historically requires U.S. residents to participate. So while doing the study would be way cheaper in Israel or other countries, like, you are forced by the FDA to do it here. I guess another consideration is I'm really passionate about not doing usability studies or human factors validation studies when they don't uncover anything new, or if the product is really low risk. I am not a believer that you should invest in a human factors validation study if you're just going to find, oh yeah, the product works as we thought, and there's no catastrophic potential human error. So that's another
Love
thing.
Last question is a book or two that you would recommend to a listener right now. They can either be business, like personal growth related, or they could be fiction. We get answers all across the board. It could be one of each, whatever you want to do. But if there's a book you're like, oh, this is a great read, I'd recommend it to anybody. What is it?
Well, if you're interested in homelessness and housing issues in the United States, I would start with Homelessness is a Housing Problem. It basically walks through all the theories about why homelessness exists, bad luck, good weather in California, etc. And it kind of boils down to what I said earlier, like the minimum rent that you can find is $1,700, and it's just literally impossible to survive if you're paid minimum wage. So that's the thesis of that book. I guess now you don't have to read it because I just told you all about it. But it is a really good, if you like statistics and like data and you want to be convinced of this, like definitely read that book. And then I love Atomic Habits.
Yep.
Actually, maybe Positive Intelligence. I'm going to replace Atomic Habits with Positive Intelligence. It's so good, by Shirzad Shamin. I'm going to try to convince him to let us do a study, kind of like evaluating transformational behavioral change among people in poverty to improve their situations. So I'm trying to get funding to do like an actual statistically significant study evaluating his techniques and the techniques described in that book to improve people's situations.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Oh, wow. I've never read that book before. It sounds super interesting. I was reading
and there's an app too. My executive coach hosted this group where a bunch of executives got together and worked through his app and kind of tried to reprogram our brains to become better people, I suppose. But there is one thing I do want to mention, is that I am launching an art studio. So as I mentioned, like, it's been a little difficult getting traditional funding, and honestly, I kind of give up and I hate begging for money anyways. So I am just going to open an art studio. It's called a marbling studio, where it's like tie-dye, but you produce shirts that have swirls and really cool marble designs on them. And so we're going to host team building events here, where they're charitable team building events where your team at your company can come out and hang out with us, learn about homelessness, meet some of our clients, and then volunteer making shirts that ultimately our clients will sell on Etsy to cover their rent. So we're calling it an emergency jobs program. 60% of our callers are calling us and they say, I lost my job, and as a result, I don't have savings, so I'm going to become homeless because I lost my job. I need a job. But what's happening here, as I mentioned, we have $30 million. Their rent gets covered, but we don't address the root issue, which is that they need a job. So we will be offering that through our studio. We won't require background checks. It's a low barrier minimum wage job, just to help them become a part of our community and then eventually find a forever job as fast as we can help them do that.
Super cool. Awesome. And that's specific to local in Santa Clara County. Yeah.
Yes. At the moment, It's just in San Jose. Our art studio is located in San Jose, California. So please check it out. Come on by. And we're doing a formal launch event in September 2026.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Shannon, this is such a cool story, such a cool journey of where you've kind of taken what your different projects you've worked on in your career. So congratulations, and we'll have the links to everything in the show notes here. Hang on for 1 minute, we'll chat offline, but thanks so much for joining the podcast again.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm Freddie Coffey, Director of Marketing at Jumpstart. The Project MedTech podcast is proudly sponsored by Jumpstart Inc. Jumpstart's Trailblazer Accelerator helps Ohio's most innovative early-stage health tech startups fast-track their growth with tailored advising from serial entrepreneurs, non-dilutive funding to fuel their journey, and unrivaled access to a network of experts, resources, and investment opportunities. Whether it's improving patient outcomes, advancing digital health, or reimagining care delivery, Jumpstart provides the high-impact services and critical resources to bring big ideas to life. Learn more at jumpstartinc.org/startups.
Thank you for listening. At our core, we at Project MedTech are networkers, educators, and consultants. We meet you where you are to bring value and to create impact. We care deeply about helping medtech companies succeed right from the start, through to exit, by providing consulting and fractional services, hosting impactful industry events, and of course, sharing incredible guest insights like the ones you heard today through our podcast. Please reach out at any time if we can be of assistance. Check out our website at www.projectmedtech.com or email us at info@projectmedtech.com.